Hello friends and welcome to our channel. Our today's video is about cops pull over a car while patrolling and ends up uncovering a hidden truth about the driver. But before we start, please make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, hit the notification bell, and smash that like button. We really appreciate your continuous support. Nowadays, every other person suffers from Monday blues, and sometimes these Monday blues get extended to the whole week because it becomes boring for people to do the same kind of work every day. But that doesn't mean the world is full of people who hate going to work. There are some people for whom their job always remains their first love. Just like the protagonist of this story, Michael Patterson, a state trooper who used to do his work sincerely despite the monotony, and one day encounters a life-changing event while he was doing his duty. What might have happened that could possibly change a trooper's life forever? Michael Patterson, who lived in New Jersey, worked as a state trooper. He loved his job and was dedicated to his duties. He was one of the nicest troopers in the state and would be ready to help people whenever they need. He wasn't like one of those cops who would go on pulling cars just to annoy people. Then what might have happened that changed his life? He never used his powers just to threaten the public and would often ask people to pull their cars over when the issue was really serious. And even if he would ask anyone to pull over, he would instruct them while writing a ticket, which other cops would rarely do. Since most of the cases would be related to speed, so it used to get stale really quick. Though he used to be really polite, there would often be some people who would be unhappy to see him. It was just another usual morning in June, and he was patrolling the Kingwood Township Highway. He saw a white BMW on the other side of the lane, which had something about it that made him run towards it to signal the driver to stop. He would generally stop drivers if they were exceeding the speed limit or driving erratically. Then what was so peculiar about the car that made him stop it? Though the driver of the car was driving in his or her limits and following all the rules, there was something about the car that was violating the laws. The car had tinted windows rather than normal see-through ones, but most people had tinted their car's window. What was a big deal about this car then? The troopers usually don't have so much time to pull over a car for a slight tint on the windows. Tints are basically used by the drivers to protect them and the passengers from the rays of the sun, and most of the tints are totally acceptable. People are hardly asked to pull over just because of a tinted window. But here, Michael had asked a cop to stop, so there might be a serious issue with the color of the tints. The windows of the car were way more tinted than it's restricted in visibility and had posed a problem for the driver, which made Michael signal the car to stop. The tints of the car were violating the legal limits, so he had to do his duty as an officer. Such kind of tint might invite unwanted complications while driving, so he had to signal the driver to stop. Would the driver pull over on a signal? Michael always tried to be warm with people on the highway and behaved nicely to the individuals who pulled over when he signaled them for the first time. And here the man in the comm seemed to be really cooperating. The driver came out of the car at once and Michael started to ask certain questions to him, unaware of the fact that he would soon discover something that would change his life forever. It was kind of embarrassing for the driver as he realized that neither he was speeding nor was he doing anything unethical, but he was aware the tints of his car's windows would pose such a problem. And surprisingly, he was supposed to know what the legal limit was. Wondering how did he know about the same? He was well aware of the legal limit of the tints because he too happened to be a policeman who had served for 30 years before he retired from his service. He too, just like Michael, loved his job, and it was a big deal for him. He was in the profession for so long, so he knew how to handle the situation. The cop didn't do it on purpose, he just liked the tints, but somehow it exceeded the legal limits. Obviously, he didn't want to battle with this other cop. He realized he needed to fix the tint as soon as possible, and took out the number of the person to whom he could ask to fix this. But first, he had to come out of this situation. There seemed to be a natural bonding between the two when they both found out that they had the same professional background. So after a little serious talk about the tint, their conversation bent towards their job. Michael, however, was unaware that these small chit-chats would end up making a significant discovery about himself. While the driver of the car gave Michael his introduction, he was surprised what followed next. He told Michael that he too had served for 30 years and his name was Matthew Bailey. He'd served in the place called Piscataway, which was 40 miles away from the present place. Michael was totally stunned by this piece of information. What was the connection between the place and Michael that made him jump on his feet after listening to the former policeman? Soon their random conversation turned into knowing all the adventures they had ever encountered during their job. Because how often do you encounter someone who has been in your profession? So Michael didn't want to lose any chance to gain some experience from him while he stood there with him. He was inquisitive about knowing the town he'd served in, but Matthew's reply to this question was enough to shake him from within. What answer might have given that he had made such an impact on Michael? Matthew told him the city's name he used to patrol, and surprisingly, it was the same city where Michael was born, and his mom still resided there. So it might be possible that he'd seen him when he was a kid. Was there some unknown connection between the two, or was this just an illusion? He knew certain cops from his hometown, but he'd not seen Matthew before. He experienced an epiphany and hesitantly asked about the retired policeman's age. At first, it would be awkward for anyone to answer that question to a stranger, especially when the other person's older. But why did he ask such a question? What was going on inside his mind? The policeman politely told him his age. His doubts were increasing with every information he was giving. He might not remember him, but he was sure that he had a connection with him. But how he would find out, and did his doubts have any significance, or was he mistaken? When Michael had asked his age, Matthew too inquired about how old he was. When he told the senior cop that he was born in 1991 in the city of Piscataway, Matthew's mind was numb for a moment. Several thoughts were running inside his mind. He had a connection with that city, but was that possible? Would there be a connection between the two? The level of Matthew's curiosity was increasing as Michael told more about his childhood. Matthew had given him all ears. What was it in his childhood that made him forget all his work and stand there like a statue? Michael told him that he was born on the 5th of October, 1991, and Matthew was stunned. He somehow managed to ask him on which street he was born. Soon, Matthew too seemed to relate all the information with a particular incident that had happened years back. Both were asking each other questions related to that particular event, and things seemed to fall in place, and pieces of the puzzle started to fit in. Though the policemen had encountered a lot of adventures in their time in the service, out of these obscure events, some incidences lived with them forever. Both of them were now pretty sure that they'd met each other before, and in the most unimaginable situation. But then, too, Matthew wanted to be sure of his hypothetical theories and could not let his imagination run into several directions without proof. He had the idea that the probability of the occurrence of such an event was rare. Was there truth in his hypothesis? His suspicion was somehow fading away as Michael gave another piece of information. His jaw dropped when he heard that Michael grew up on a road called Poe Place. It was the same place where he'd been called in an emergency 26 years back, and that event still had an impact on his mind. What had exactly happened 26 years back? Poe Place was a place that he wouldn't forget in his lifetime. He distinctly remembered the small town and dead-end roads. This place was not only to the majority of the people, it was back in those days. He was still a rookie when he was assigned to patrol that part of the city. Everything was normal until one day he received an emergency call. What was the emergency? Almost 26 years back, a woman in Poe Place went into labor at the most unexpected time. Women understand that labor pain is inevitable at a particular stage of time in pregnancy. It's quite common to suffer from one while the woman is in the last weeks of her pregnancy and is considered as a healthy indication. These indications might not be sure that the baby is trying to come out, but not in every case, just like this woman who went into labor at the most unexpected time. It's considered normal to experience contractions when the female goes into labor. This process speeds up as the time of the delivery comes close. And there's no doubt in it that every woman feels the same, just like this woman, but her symptoms were making her nervous. She already had a boy before, so she tried to put all the other thoughts to rest. Even though she'd experienced it before when she was pregnant with her elder son, she clearly remembered herself to be really calm in the situation. But this time, the pain made her life difficult. She wasn't able to work or even walk a little distance. The contractions had increased in the blink of an eye, so she wanted to go to the hospital before the time came because she didn't want to end up giving birth to her child on the roadside. The woman in pain was none other than Michael's mother, and she wasn't the woman who would panic in vain, so there had to be something serious that she was nervous about. She waited for a while but called her husband in the meantime as the pain was becoming more intense with every hour. She started to feel that the child was on his or her way. The hospital was nearby, so it wouldn't be a problem to rush at the time of delivery or if the pain continues to grow. It wasn't the first time they were having a kid. Still, they wanted to be sure that everything goes according to plan. So when they called the doctor, they even dialed 911. What was a policeman going to do when she'd be delivering a child? Although it may sound strange, the policemen are given proper training to assist women in labor to help deliver their baby in case of an emergency. As soon as they informed the police, they got a quick reply that a police officer was on his way and would reach their house in no time. The assigned police officer rushed where Karen, the woman in labor, was in pain. The officer who was assigned the crucial day was none other than Matthew. He left all his work in the middle and rushed on his motorbike. Karen was very young at that time and was pregnant for about 39 weeks. At the time when she went into sudden labor, her husband was not present in the house. so he thought it'd be safe to call a police officer until he reached his home. Karen's due date was near, but she wasn't expecting to deliver a baby anytime sooner, so in the evening she went along with her elder son, Tarek, to buy some groceries at the store. Everything seemed to be fine until she started to feel sudden pain while she was halfway through her shopping. The pain somehow gave her the indication that she would be delivering the baby soon. She was expecting tiny contractions, but this pain had grown to be very intense. That made Karen unable to walk. She had to reach home before the matter worsened, but due to pain, it had become difficult for her to take a step ahead. How would she be able to get back in her car in this situation? Would she be able to reach home? Luckily, Poe Place wasn't far away from the grocery store she was at the moment. She somehow managed to get home. Tarek grew anxious watching his mother in immense pain. He wanted to help his mother, but neither did he know how to drive a car, nor did he know what should be done in the situation. He was feeling completely helpless in this situation. As soon as she reached home, her husband helped her and carried her inside the house. He had already called her doctor as well as the police officer in case of an emergency. He knew that any critical situation might arise and would be possible that they wouldn't be able to reach the hospital. So taking the help of the police officer seemed to him to be the safest option of all. Karen and Bobby were so relieved when the police officer arrived at their house. Karen, however, was in severe pain, and she was about to deliver her baby any time, so having the presence of the officer seemed to encourage the spirit of the couple. They had absolutely no time to go to the hospital, and the doctor was on his way, but the pain wouldn't wait for the doctor to make it to the house. It was indeed a crucial moment for the couple as well as the officer. Matthew, however, was calm as he'd been trained for such kind of an emergency, but that doesn't mean he was any specialist of the same. So there was serious risk involved. It was an enormous task for a rookie to help deliver a baby. Would things be in their favor? There was no way Karen's doctor could reach the house, and Karen's pain was increasing with every passing minute. So the officer contacted the doctor and asked him to stay on the line while he helped to deliver the baby. Every second was crucial. Even a minor carelessness could result in a disaster. The officer was well aware of the critical situation he was in. Would he be able to handle the situation all by himself? They had everything they would need. Karen was on the bed and was wailing in pain. Her husband and her son were growing anxious, but the police officer tried to calm them down. Bobby was running back and forth to bring all the necessary things and was really worried. Finally, the moment came when the baby was about to come into the world. Everyone's heart was racing as the baby started to come out. The son remained still, whereas the father was holding Karen's hand tightly to give her strength. Out of all the pain and suffering, there came a moment when everything stopped for a mini-second, and there was pin-drop silence in the room. After a second, there came a loud cry, and Karen delivered a baby boy, and everyone sighed in relief. Matthew handed the newborn baby in the hands of the mother. The couple was happy that the critical moment had passed peacefully, and their newborn child was healthy, and his weight was as normal as any other newborn baby. Matthew untangled the umbilical cord from the baby's tiny neck and was finally relieved. And after 26 years, the baby had grown into a young man and was standing in front of him. It was almost unbelievable when Michael realized that the man who was standing in front of him was the same who had helped his mother deliver him. It was really overwhelming for him. Michael suddenly looked at his watch and surprised it had been so long that they'd been discussing the same. And now Michael had to let him go, though it was the most difficult thing for him to do. He had to return to the job, but after recalling such an event, it was difficult for him to forget it in an instant. But he couldn't let his emotions come between his work. And after meeting the man who'd saved his life, he was determined to do his duty with more passion and sincerity. Michael was totally unwilling to let him go and had a desire to meet him again, but he wasn't sure if the elderly man wanted the same or not. Luckily, he had Matthew's address. He was now determined to see his lifesaver again. He didn't even offer a ticket to him, knowing that the backstory and his good deeds. Being a policeman, Matthew too knew what was the legal limit and was determined to correct his mistake. But would they be able to meet again? Though everything was crystal clear in front of Matthew, he was still uncertain until the end. He was doubtful Michael was the same kid that he delivered years back. Every evidence was clearly indicating the same. He's still trying to remember the details of the birth of the boy to the story of Michael's birth. He clearly remembered that he'd not been in such a situation after that incident, and only he knew about the birth and no one else. So the theory was true that he had helped to deliver Michael years back. It was difficult for both the men to digest the truth that had just unraveled. They were surprised as how they didn't even reside in the same city. They'd met after ages in another city, and that too by chance. What if Michael wouldn't have noticed the tint on the BMW, and just in case the driver of the car wouldn't have stopped? They would have never been able to discover such an incident. When both the men returned to their homes, they first told their wives about the memorable day. The women asked their husbands if they'd exchanged numbers or not, They were both in shock that they were so carried away at the moment they'd just forgotten to take each other's number to remain in contact. Would they be able to contact each other again? Michael somehow managed to get Matthew's number and left a note on his doorstep. When Matthew saw the note the other day, he was overjoyed that the kid he helped deliver all those years back had tried to contact him and was grateful for his help. He wasted no time and contacted Michael to plan another meeting. Michael knew that there was one more person who would be really happy to hear the news. So he wasted no more time and dialed his mother's number. When she heard about the same, her joy was unexplainable. She always felt guilty for not thanking the officer enough for helping her in those crucial moments, and now fate has finally given her a chance to thank him again. She too asked about his whereabouts, and Michael told her that he'd retired from his services and is leading a peaceful life with his wife and kids. She was happy to hear that he was doing good in life. She also wanted to meet him and thank him again, personally. Michael told her about the plan they'd made. This incident wasn't less than a miracle, and when Michael had met Matthew for the first time, the camera behind them was recording everything. They absolutely didn't have any idea how lucky it would be to turn out for them. It seemed a bit obvious when the video went viral and received thousands of views and comments. When finally the family met each other, it was an emotional moment. His mother's eyes were filled with tears as she saw the man who'd helped her in a crucial time once again. She'd never imagined that this would happen, and she'd be able to meet him again. The whole family was overwhelmed with emotions. Matthew's determination and sincerity not only inspired Michael, but the rest of the world too, who watched the video. He proved that if you do good, it will come around one or the other day. Did you enjoy today's story? Let us know what you think about it in the comments. If you believe this story was amazing, don't hesitate to share it with your buddies. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell so you'll never miss your daily dose of incredible stories.